In this video, we're going to go through the answers for the decimals test that we've just done in remote learning. Just like in class, where I would normally come in and would go through the questions that stood out for people to have issues with, or ones that you yourself thought you had issues with. I'll go through each of the answers here today. I really would like you to go through these answers in conjunction with the work that's been corrected on Schoolbox. So maybe loading up the Schoolbox test papers, I guess, and the corrections I've made. Please note that on the test papers on Schoolbox, I certainly haven't written out all of the steps, the answers. I've usually just indicated what the correct answer would be. So again, this video is really about going through how the answer should have come about, and also talk a little bit about some of the common mistakes I may have seen. Okay, so we'll go through them step by step. Again, if you've definitely got questions right, you could jump over ones that you don't need to look at. But I would encourage you to maybe just watch the whole thing anyway, just to see if there's maybe some ideas or points that you've maybe missed or could do a little bit better anyway. As we go through, I'll tell you right now, I'll probably make some mistakes in writing on the screen and so forth, so just bear with me. We'll get through it all together. Okay, part A was multiple choice, and we'll just go through these reasonably quickly. The first one is to find the decimal with the largest value, and of course the most important thing here to start with is understanding the order. We are going for the largest. A couple of people did make the mistake of finding the smallest value. So to find the largest, of course, we'll start with the biggest value, and in this case, for all these decimals, the biggest part of each number is the units column, which in all of these is a 5, and I'll just indicate on one of them at least that that's what we're looking at. So this number here, that is a 5. Just use a better pen here. So that doesn't tell us anything to help with which one's bigger. We then look at the next biggest part of the number, which of course is the first decimal place, and that would be the tenths column. So in this case, all of them are zeros. Again, that doesn't help us with knowing what's bigger. And we keep going, move to the second decimal place. So in A, that's a 1. In B, that's a 9, so that's a pretty big number. C, it's a 0, so that's now our smallest. D is also a 9, and E is a 1. So at the moment, our two biggest numbers are either B or D, because they've both got 5.09 to begin with. So now we have to go to the third decimal place, and in B that decimal place is a 1, and in D it is a 0, which means that B, of course, is our largest number, so that should have been our answer. We now look at question 2. Question 2 asks us to round if we were to round off this number 1.4279 to two decimal places, what would be the critical digit? Now remembering the critical digit is the digit that we use to decide whether we round up or down. So in the case of this number, we have 1.4279, and we want to round to two decimal places. So ideally what we would show in the working out, the way we've done in class anyway, is we show a cut after the number of decimal places, and the next number to the right, in this case the 7, becomes our critical digit. The critical digit telling us whether we round up or down. Now, if it was asking us to round, we would be saying that we round up because it's a 7, and that would then round up to 1.43. But what we care about is what is the critical digit. So our answer should have been D for number 7. Moving on to question 3. When dividing the decimal by 1,000, how many decimal places do we move? So again, this no real working out to be done here. We just have to remember how we multiply or divide by factors of 10. So when we are doing a division, of course, we are moving to the left. And when we are doing a division like this with just a factor of 10, it's really about how many zeros we have. So in the question, it has 3 zeros that we're dividing by. So we would be moving 3 places to the left. So we would be circling C as our answer. And the last multiple choice, again, how many decimal places will there be in the answer for the question 4.7 times 5.09? Now again, looking at the question carefully, there's no need to actually work this out. There is absolutely no need to work out what the answer is. If we remember, when we multiply decimals together, we just convert them, or turn them into basically normal numbers by ignoring the decimal place. So if I was going to work this out, I would simply have 47 multiplied by 509. Okay, making sure that my units, my last numbers line up. Okay, and I'd go ahead and do that. And then the last stage, when I've got some answer for this, is I would add back in the number of decimal places that were in the question. So looking at these two numbers in the question, I have one decimal place here, and I have two decimal places in the second part of the question. So all I'd be doing if I had some answer down the bottom here is I would add back in 3 decimal places. And that's really all the question asks, is how many decimal places would there be? So again, the answer is simply B, number 3, and we can see that straight away. There's absolutely no need to actually work out the answer at all for the equation. So it's a really quick question actually, and again, being a multiple choice, if we had to do a lot of working out, we probably would wonder why. So quick answers are usually what we're looking for in multiple choice. Okay, let's move on to B, the short answers. So again, we would expect these to possibly be slightly longer answers. So the first one says, for the number 27.497, give the value of the digit shown, giving your answer in words. Now, a lot of people didn't quite do this one as I expected. What we're really asking for is the place value of these numbers in that bigger number. So what is the place value of the 4 for the first question, and what is the place value of the 1? So really what I'm looking for is the 4 is the first decimal place, and the first decimal place is the tenths. Don't forget it's the tenths, not 10. Okay, so if you said 10, then you'd be talking about technically where the 2 is, right? That's in the 10 place. We're talking about the first decimal place, that's the tenths. Some people wrote 4 tenths, and I've allowed that. So long as the word tenths was there, I pretty much let it go. So again, for the number 1, it's in the thousandths column. So really looking for that, okay? So not 1,000, again, that's completely wrong. That would be several places to the left. It's the thousandths with the THS on the end, okay? Very, very important. Number 2 asks us to arrange those values in ascending order. So again, probably the most important thing that some people made mistakes on is forgetting again that ascending means from smallest to biggest. It means going up. Okay, so what we'd be looking at here, and I won't do the whole question necessarily, and actually yes I will. So we'll be putting these in order. So we're going to look through, and again, a bit like the earlier question, we're going to look for what is the smallest whole number if we've got one. So the first one is a 5, then an 8, then a 3, then a 5, an 8, a 5, a 3, an 8. So we've got 2 numbers here with a 3 in the first, in the whole numbers position. So they're going to be our 2 smallest so far. So we then look to the first decimal. So the first decimal in this number is an 8, and the first decimal in the other one is a 0. So obviously this second last number in our list is our smallest number. So we would write 3.085, comma between it. And here's my best tip. Cross it out in your list when you've used it. A number of people either used a number twice, or some even forgot to put a number in. It's so critical to cross it out to make sure that all get used. So now that I've crossed that one out, I know my next number that had a 3 at the start is going to be the second number. So 3.805. All right, cross that one out. And now we look for the next numbers. So the next biggest numbers would be ones that start with a 5. So I've got a 5.8, I've got another 5.8, and I've got a 5.0. So obviously that 5.0 is the smallest. So 5.038, cross that one out. Out of these other 2, I've got a 5.80 and a 5.83. So 5.80 is smaller, so it'll be 5.803, cross it out. Then I've got my 5.830, cross it out. Now I'm down to 3 numbers left. We've got an 8.53, an 8.05, and an 8.35. So 8.0 is certainly smallest of those 3. So it's 8.053. Cross it out. Then it's going to be the 8.350. And lastly, 8.530. Okay, crossing it out. Making sure that I've got them, double check if you need to, but if you have been crossing them out one by one as you go, then you should know that you've used all of them now. Question 3 asks us to round the number 1.8295 to one decimal place. So again, a lot of people didn't do this very well. In a lot of cases, though, I've put it down to a slight misunderstanding about the question. So in a lot of cases, I still gave you the mark, so to speak. But let's just look at how this should have been done. So first thing, we're rounding to one decimal place. So we know our answer has to only have one decimal. So the first part was, what number are you rounding to? So really this was asking us, where is our cut going to happen? So in the number 1.8295, if we're going to one decimal place, our cut's going to happen here after the 8, after the first decimal place. So really that was what that first question was asking. What is the number we're rounding to? And that's going to be an 8 in this case. Then our critical digit is the number to the right, so that would be a 2. And of course, being a 2, that tells us we round down. So that's what I really wanted to see, or expected to see in those 3 spaces there. Then I'm really asking to see the working out. So although I kind of started up the top in the question, what I expect to see down here is 1.8295. So you write it out. Then we show our cut. We show what our critical digit is. We might write over here 2 equals down just for ourselves. Okay, and then I'll say it's approximately equal to 1.8. Now this approximately is super critical. Remember, if I just wrote equals 1.8, I would be absolutely wrong, because 1.8295 is definitely not equal to or the same as 1.8. Okay, but that squiggly equals, which we've talked about before, means that it's approximately equal to, it's close to, and that is what we're looking for. B is exactly the same, it's just asking for a different number of decimal places. So again, in the number 1.8295 to 3 decimal places, so our cut would happen after that 9. So the first thing we're looking for is the number 9. Our critical digit would then be a 5. And yes, this is always the tricky one. 5, does it go up or down? Well, 5 always rounds up, so we'd write up here. I also accepted people doing arrows, that was fine, I guess. So again, let's show the working out properly. So we would write the number 8 out, 1.8295. All right, we show our cut. We show that that is our critical digit. Okay, and we might again on the side here write 5 equals up, just for our own reference. And then the squiggly, it's approximately equal to 1 point. Now let's be careful. If we're going to round a 9 up, that becomes a 10. Well, we can't have a 10 there, so that 10, that 1 moves across into the 2, so we actually get 1.83. And now this is where some people made a mistake. Some people go, oh, there's a 0, we don't need it. But we absolutely do need to include this particular 0, because the question clearly says to 3 decimal places. So it said 3, so we must include 3. So technically, if you wrote approximately 1.83, then you are incorrect for this question, because it asks for 3 decimal places. Be very, very careful of those sorts of things. Question 4, we start getting into some actual calculations. Now, for the addition and subtraction, which all these 4 are, the most important thing again is to just keep everything lined up. If you keep your decimal point lined up and therefore each of your place values, then it's really just doing normal addition and subtraction and just keeping that decimal place where it should be. A lot of people made mistakes of shifting things around. Some people made some very silly mistakes about swapping numbers, so trying to take the bigger number from the small number for some reason. I don't really get that. But really, if you just keep everything lined up, you do your math properly, these will all add up. So let's go through them anyway, just to make sure we see what happens. So the first one is an addition. So we have 15.87 plus 4.6. So again, notice that I've kept those decimal points really clearly lined up. If it helps you, you can put the extra 0 there. It doesn't change the answer, but it helps you to keep that 7 lined up. It's perfectly fine. So now we just do a simple addition. So 0 and 7, of course, is 7. 6 and 8 is 14. So we carry the 1 up. Don't forget the decimal point staying in line. 5 and 4 is 9, plus that 1 that we carried, of course, is 10. And then the 1 plus the 1 we carried is 2. So we should have an answer of 20.47. For B, again, no different, just make sure everything lines up. So 84.5 minus 79.62. So again, if we want to add the extra 0 in to help us to keep things lined up, that's a good idea, keeping the decimal points and all the place values lined up. So now 2 from 0, of course, doesn't work, so we have to take from the next space up, so that becomes a 4, and we bring that down, so that's 10 now. So 2 from 10, of course, works, and that is 8. 6 from 4 doesn't work, so again we're going to take from in front of us, so that's a 3, and then we get the 1 here. So 6 from 14 works, so that gives us 8 as well. Here is our decimal point, keep it lined up. 9 from 3 doesn't work, so that we take from in front again, so that's a 7. Sorry, it's a little bit fiddly here. I'll just write this up here now to make it a bit clearer. So 9 from 13, of course leaves 4 left over, and 7 from 7 leaves nothing. So our final answer is 4.88. For C, again, same steps, same process. We do have 3 numbers to add. They're all of different sizes as far as how many decimal places. So again, adding those extra zeros in will help. So what I'm already seeing straight away is our number with the most decimal places has 3. So when I write each of these other numbers out, I'm going to make sure they have up to 3 decimal places, just to make it easier. So 32.9, I'm going to include 2 zeros because I know I want to show 3 decimal places to match the longest number, if you like. So then I have 16.048, and then I have 7.59, and I'll include that 0 as well. It's just an addition equation from here. So 0, 8, and 0 is 8. 9 and 4 is 13. 9 and 5 is 14, plus the 1 is 15. Keeping our decimal point lined up here. 7, 6, and 12 is 15, plus the 1 is 16. And 3 and 1 is 4, plus the 1 is 5. So we should end up with 56.538. And the last one, of course, is just another subtraction. Again, bigger numbers and also numbers with alternating decimal places. So just keeping everything lined up. So 417.2. Same thing, I know that the other number's got 3 decimal places. I'm going to put 2 extra zeros here. Minus 309.658. I'll just make that decimal a bit bigger. Okay, so now it's just a normal subtraction. The tricky thing here, of course, is we're going to start with taking 8 from 0, which we can't do. And when we look to take from the next level up, we go, oh, that's a 0 as well. So we end up taking from this 2, which becomes a 1. And don't forget, what you're technically bringing down is a 1 here. So now that is 10. So now we're going to take from this 10, and that's going to be a 9. And we can bring 1 down here to make this one equal to 10. So some people made the mistake here with their taking and borrowing and moving around, and they would call that 0 again. No, it was 10 there, remember? And so now that 10 in the 10th column hundredths column becomes a 9. Okay, so now 8 from 10, of course, we can do, so that's a 2. 5 from 9, of course, we can do, so that's a 4. Now we've got 6 from what is technically a 1, so we can't do that, so we're going to go across here and take from the next one again. So now this is a 6, and that is a 1, so we've got 11. So 6 from 11, of course, is 5. Keep our decimal point lined up. 9 from 6, again, we can't do that, so let's take this 1 and turn it into a 0 and bring the 1 back here. So 9 from 16, of course, we can do, and that leaves us with 7. 0 from 0, of course, is fine, that's still 0, and 3 from 4 is a 1. So we end up with 107.542. So again, the most trickiest part about this is all the borrowing or taking that we had to do, and just keeping track of that carefully. Sorry, I got a little bit squashy here, but if you just are careful of how you do that, then you should have had no problems working this one out. All right, question 5 asks us to calculate the following again, showing all our working out. And I'll just pause again here for a second and say it's still amazing me, unfortunately, that people don't show their working out. It's really disconcerting that after half a year, we still haven't got that right. So please, 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 I can't say it enough times, show all your working out. more than likely you did it on some scrap paper. So if you had to do it, show it on the test. And especially when the question itself says show or working out, I really don't know how much clearer we can make that. So you've got to get that right. If you don't show working out, you just lose so many marks. Okay, let's keep going. So the first one, 74.6 divided by 1000. So here we are dividing by a power of 10. So the only real working out we need to show here is moving the decimal place. So even from the multiple choice at the start, we should know that dividing by 1000 means moving the decimal place 3 places to the left. The number of places, of course, being how many zeros. So we have 3 here, and to the left, because it's division, if this happened to be multiplying by 1000, we would be moving it instead to the right. So if we write 74.6, we need to move this decimal place 1, 2, 3 places, right? So it goes here. Of course, we need something in this space, so that's a 0. And generally speaking, we always have something to the left-hand side of the decimal place. So I'm going to put a 0 there as well. So really our answer should have been equal to 0.0746. And that's more than enough to what I'd expect to see. Now, the B question, 0.803 times 200. Couple of ways you could have done that. Of course, you could have done a normal multiplication, so just ignore the decimal point, multiply it like normal and put the decimal places back in. Nothing wrong with that, but we can do it a little bit more quickly because again this is a factor of 10. So, a multiple of 10, I should say. So again, it's got 2 zeros, so we know it's originally a power, but also we've got this 2 here. So we can do it in 2 steps, but they're still quicker. So multiplying by, if this was just multiplied by 100, we would simply move the decimal place 2 spots to the right, so we'd end up with 80.3. And then because it's multiplying by 200, this 2 at the front, we would just take that answer and multiply that by 2, which is a quicker multiplication than by doing it by 200. So what I mean is we would say 0.803, that's the same as saying multiply by 100. So the 2 decimal places means that this moves 1, 2, oops, wrong thing, sorry. The 2 decimal places, because it's multiplication, means it goes 1, 2. So that answer would be equal to 80.3. And then what would simply say is 80.3 multiplied by 2. Again, we're technically ignoring this decimal point for a minute, just doing a straight multiplication. So 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 0 is 0, 2 times 8 is 16. Okay, and then we have to put in the decimal point. So we only had one decimal point, or one decimal place, sorry. So we put one decimal place here, and our final answer would be that, 160.6. That's just a lot quicker than doing times 0, etc. You're more likely to get confused with all those extra zeros. So just see it's a multiple of 10. So we simply say, hey, move the decimal place and then multiply by what the number is. Hopefully that makes sense to you now. C is a multiplication that we just do as normal. So here we have a decimal multiplied by a whole number. So we basically say, okay, how many decimal places in the number? There are 2. And I usually like to make a little note, dp equals 2, just so I don't forget later on. And now we just ignore the decimal place and multiply like normal. So 1582, notice I have no decimal point shown, multiplied by 7. Some people made the mistake of putting the 7 up here, for example. No, that would be very, very bad. Keep it lined up with it being a unit, basically. So if we just do this normal multiplication, so 7 times 2 is 14, 7 times 8 is 56, plus of course the 1 makes 57. 7 times 5 is 35, plus the 5 here makes 40. And 7 times 1 is 7, plus the 1, of course, being 11. So this multiplication is 11,074. But now I add in the 2 decimal places. So if I go here, 11,074, add in 2 decimal places. So remember, technically you could say that's where a decimal 0 is. So 2 decimal places means I move it 1, 2 to here. So my answer is equal to, or I might just write up here, equal to 110.74. That's a decimal point, not a 0. Okay, so again, it's just straight multiplication of decimals. The last one we have 8.09 divided by 5. Again, like decimals, what we do is we ignore the decimal point essentially. We just do this like a normal division, but we do keep our decimal point lined up for the answer. So when I write this, I'm going to write 809. Alright, I'll leave the decimal point in there, so I don't actually take it out like multiplication. I'll leave it there, and it's divided by 5. And what I like to do personally is I just put my decimal point straight in up above it. Okay, just so I know it's going to be straight there. So 5 into 8 will go 1 time, and it will leave us 3 left over. Okay, so now 5 into 30 goes 6 times, and then 5 into 9 will go once, and this is where a lot of people made the mistake. If this was normal division without the decimal point, we would say remainder 4, for example. But we're using decimals, we don't have remainders anymore. So what we have is still 4 left over. So just like we brought the 3 across, we're bringing the 4 across. But don't think it's a 4. Remember, any decimal has zeros after it. So really, if we wrote this 9 or 8.09000, as many zeros as you wanted to, you would get to this point, you'd bring the 4 across, and you'd then see it is actually 40. Right? Because remember, what we're bringing across is a multiple of 10, right, into that column. So now what we actually have is 5s into 40 here, and of course 5s into 40 we can do, which is 8. Now we actually have absolutely nothing left over, so we have this extra decimal point that we needed to go to. So this would be our final answer here, 1.618. Okay, for E, again it's another division, but here we have a division by a decimal. So we've got a decimal at the front divided by another decimal. And while it is possible to do, the easiest thing to do is to turn our divider into a whole number. So we do that, of course, by moving the decimal place to the right. So we're going to go 1, 2, we're essentially multiplying it by 100. So this becomes a 6, but we have to do the same to the other number, okay? Basically any other numbers in the equation. So we're going to also move this 2 times, 1, 2. So that becomes 179.4. So our new equation is written there. So now that we've got our number here as a whole number, we can just do division like we just did before. So 179.4 divided by 6. Again, I'm going to put my decimal point straight in, keeping it lined up. But other than that, I just ignore it for the moment. So 6 into 1 will not go. So of course we bring the 1 across into the next column. 6 into 17 will go twice, which is 12. So that leaves us 5 left over. So we bring that across to the next column. Okay, and then we've got 9 6s are 54, so 9 goes up the top, and it was 54, so that leaves us 5, apologies. So 5 goes across into the next column, and of course we just said 9 times 6 is 54, so another 9 up the top, and we've got nothing left over now, nothing to bring across, so our final answer is 29.9. And for F, we're just going to do another multiplication. This time, both numbers have decimals in them. But again, remember, all we're going to do here is work out this equation as a normal multiplication, but put the decimals back in at the end. So total in this question, there are 3 decimal places, 2 for this number, 1 for this number. So my decimal points equals 3. Remember, I like to keep a little record of it there. So then I just do a normal multiplication. 419 multiplied by 63. And again, some people made the mistake of putting the 6 under the 4 and the 3 under the 1. No. If you treat these as normal numbers, this is 419 and 63. So they should be lined up like this. So we just go through it like normal. So 9 times 3 is 27. 3 times 1 is 3. Picking up that 2 makes 5. And 3 times 4 is 12. When we start multiplying the second number, of course, we're starting with a tens number, so we start with a 0. 6 9s are 54. 6 times 1 is 6, picking up that 5 is 11. And 6 times 4 is 24, picking up that 1 is 25. Of course, we now add these two numbers up. So 7 and 0 is 7, 5 and 4 is 9, 2 and 1 is 3, 1 and 5 is 6, and 2 and nothing, of course, is 2. So that is the correct answer for this particular equation, but now we have to add back in our 3 decimal points. So our final answer is 26397, but we need 1, 2, 3 decimal numbers. So our decimal point will go here. So we have 26.397. Okay, part C was our extended response. This was a bit optional. The instructions I provided, especially to your parents, was that if you were struggling to get through the previous 2 sections, to maybe not worry about this, or to maybe only have a go depending on how you went with the first 2 sections. I'm hoping you had a go anyway. I think most people have, but again, it was a little bit of an extra step, I guess. And especially because of the remote learning part of this. Normally at school I would have expected you to have a go, but remote learning, it has been hard. We recognise that. So anyway, as with all worded questions, we should really be writing worded answers at the end, and a lot of the questions really about understanding, looking for the keywords in the questions to make sure we've done everything that's required. So the first part was that this is a part of the menu at Tony's Pizzas, and part A says the Carlton family orders 3 pizzas. The first one's a small vegetarian, a large meat lovers, and a family-sized barbecue chicken. How much will it cost? So if we look at costs, of course, they are really just decimals that we have the dollar sign in front of in this case, so we know how to deal with decimals, hopefully. So for the most part, we'll ignore the dollar sign until we get to the end of the question, where we must always include it back in. The other thing, of course, we know is that our answers will always have 2 decimal places because we're dealing with money, and money has 2 decimal places to represent the dollars and cents properly. Right, so that sort of is informing us what our answers should look like. Now, the first real mistake that people may have made here is just mixing up the different pizzas and sizes. So again, be very careful with this. So the first one, of course, that they had was a small vegetarian. So that's what I'm looking for here. The second one that they had was a large meat lovers. So meat lovers down the bottom here, and it was a large. And the third one they had was a family-sized barbecue chicken, which is this one. I want a total cost. Of course, we're talking about an addition here, so we simply write these out. So I'm just going to write 8.70, not worrying about the dollars at the moment. 13, making sure I keep the decimal places and everything lined up. 13.60 and 16.30. So it's an addition, and we just go ahead and do that. So of course, all the zeros are 0. 7, 3, and 6 is 16. Make sure a decimal point comes in at this point and stays nicely lined up. 8 and 3 is 11, plus 6 is 17, plus the 1 is 18. Carry the 1 up. And then 1 and 1 is 2, plus the 1 we just carried up is 3. So the answer to that addition is 38.60, but the question is in dollars and cents, so our actual answer is $38.60. But of course, it's a worded question, so we need a worded answer. So something like the family's meal cost, don't forget the dollar sign, $38.60. So something as simple as that. You might have a more worded answer. So to buy a small vegetarian, a large meat lovers, and a family-sized barbecue chicken, it will cost $38.60. The Carlton family's order, it doesn't really matter. The important part is that you've put the total answer, which is $38.60, into a worded response. Now, part B of this question says to find out that if Mrs. Carlton paid for that meal with $50 note, how much change will she receive? So, of course, that relies on you working out what part A was, and we know that that was, in our case, $38.60. I'm just going to write it up there for reference. So what I'm really looking at here is a subtraction question where I have my $50 note, which of course is 50.00, minus $38.60. There we go. And we just do a normal subtraction. So a little bit like previously, the first column's fine, 0 from 0 is 0, but now 6 from 0 I can't do. If I go to take from the next column up, I go, well, that's a 0, so I can't do anything there. So I go the next column up. So our 5 becomes a 4, and we move a unit down, so that's a 10. But now we can take from this 10 and make that a 9 and bring one more back down here, so that, of course, now we can do 6 from 10, which is 4. Keep our decimals lined up. 8 from 9, of course, is easy. That's a 1. And 3 from 4 is a 1 as well. So our final answer is 11.40. But wait, it's dollars and cents. So in actual fact, it's $11.40. But wait again, it's a worded question. So her change from $50 is $11.40. So something along that lines, we have a proper worded answer. Okay, part C is another one where we need to refer back to Tony's. I won't bring that back up on the screen necessarily, but it basically says a footy team comes in and they order 4 large margaritas, 6 large vegetarian pizzas. How much will this cost? So there's a few steps to this one. First, let's make sure we get the correct sizes and pizza types, so we get the right numbers. Then we're going to work out how much each set of pizzas was, so how much 4 margaritas is and how much 6 vegetarians are. And finally, we're going to take those two answers and add them together to find a total cost for this order. So let's start with the large margaritas. If you did go back to the table, you'll see that they are $12.20 each. So really we're saying is what's $12.20 or 12.20 multiplied by 4. Being a multiplication question, remember the easiest thing is to ignore the decimal point, but remember how many decimal places you have altogether and just add them in at the end. So if I rewrite this, we have 1220 times 4. So you can say I haven't included decimal point, but I've kept all the columns lined up. So 4 times 0, of course, is 0. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 2 is 8. And 4 times 1 is 4. But again, I put back in my 2 decimal places from the question. So my actual answer at the bottom here is 48.80. And it's a dollar amount, so I'm going to put the dollar sign back in. So the 4 large margarita pizzas cost $48.80. We now do the same for the 6 large vegetarian pizzas. So again, a large vegetarian is $12.70, and that's going to be multiplied by 6. So again, I write that out without showing the decimal point. So I have 1270 multiplied by 6. Again, there's going to be 2 decimal points at the end, so just remember that. So 6 zeros are 0, 7 sixes are 42. So we put the like that. 6 times 2 is 12. Picking up the 4 as well is 16. And 6 times 1 is 6. Picking up the 1 is 7. So we have 76.20. But again, we've got to put the 2 decimal places back in. So we have 76.20 and the dollar sign. So now we've got the cost of the 4 large margaritas in the first column there. We've got the cost for the 6 large vegetarians, and now we just have to add those up. So we now have 48.80 plus 76.20. All right, so we're keeping the decimal places and all the place values lined up. We just do a simple addition. So 0 and 0 is 0. 8 and 2 is 10, so we bring that one up. Don't forget your decimal point, keep it lined up. 6 and 8 is 14, plus the 1 is 15. And 7 and 4 is, gone blank, 11, sorry, plus the 1 is 12. Okay, so we have 125.00, but again, it's a dollar amount, and it's a worded question, so we're just going to, for space, write it out in one hit. So the order will be $125.00. Again, being dollars, you must include the 2 decimal places. Even though they're zeros, you must include them for accuracy, basically, in this case. And our last question for the test. Here we go. So again, this relies on your answer to part C above. So the cost from above, part C, is shared evenly between 20 boys in the team. How much do each of them pay? So hopefully you realise that this is a division question. So essentially what you're saying is take the number from above, so that was 125.00, divide it by 20. Okay, so when we're doing division, there's a few ways here we could do this as well. We could theoretically cancel some numbers out. We won't bother doing that here because we haven't really talked about it. So let's just do it in the way that we've seen before, and that is to just do a normal division and just keep the decimal point lined up. So we have 125.00 divided by 20. Okay, so again, I'm going to put the decimal point straight in so I don't forget about it and kept it all lined up. So 20 into the number 1 doesn't work. Okay, so we move our 1 to the next column. 20 into 12 still does not work. Okay, so we move our 12 into the next column. Now we have 20 into 125. Of course, that works 6 times and leaves 5 left over, so we move that across to these zeros. 20 into 50 will go 2 times, leaving 10. Now, this is the tricky part. It's not a 1, it is a 10. So if I write 10 here, I've really now got the number 100 in this last column. So 20 into 100 will go 5 times. Okay, so for each boy on this team, if the total order is 125 and they split it evenly, which is what we've assumed here, they'll each pay $6.25 for their meal. So again, a worded question means a worded answer. So each person pays, and again, don't forget it's dollars, so we put the dollar sign, $6.25. And that's what we'll be looking for. So that rounds out the explanations for our test. Again, there were some silly mistakes made, certainly by people. There was still some people that didn't show working out when you really should have. But for the most part, what I've seen, you guys have done pretty well. When you've worked through the steps properly, when you have applied the learning that we've done. Again, I think most of you did well through this test. But please do go through them, go through each question, go through how I did it compared to how you did it. There were a few times where people got the right answer, but to be honest, I'm not really sure. I'm certainly not saying people cheated and got a calculator out, but I think you sort of fluked a couple here and there. That happens, I get it. But please go through each of these questions, see how I did them. Again, sometimes there are different ways and ways that might make more sense when you have different knowledge. But again, the idea in any of these tests that we do for a chapter is to apply the skills from this chapter. So unless it sort of has to be done, we always try and look for how can I use the skills from this chapter to do this test. An example where, just to put this in context, an example where you might do something differently would be in this part C here. And some people did. So instead of doing a multiplication, they simply added up 12.20 4 times. Is it wrong? No, it's not. Is it the most efficient way? Probably not. Does it really show the best skills? Again, probably not. Recognizing that this is really a multiplication question is the better option. But strictly speaking, if we only care about getting the answer, then you're right. You added up 4 times, and the second pizza you added up 6 times. I think one person even added up the whole thing in one hit. So 12.20, 4 of them, plus 12.70 6 times, and it did one big addition. You'll still get 125 at the end if you do your math properly, but it's probably not it's definitely not the most efficient way to go about this. So again, sometimes you can do things a little bit differently, but please take into account what I've shown you again today. And if you feel that you didn't do it that way for a really good reason, fine, not a problem. But if you didn't do it that way because you didn't get it, then I suggest going back and having a look. Last thing I'll say in this, is as always, I'm more than happy to speak with any of you about your tests and how you went about them, and specific questions if you're wondering why it was done a certain way. At the moment, if we're still remote learning, of course, you can do that via email. I'm happy to try and do the best I can. Or alternatively, when we do come back in a few weeks' time, back to school, I'm more than happy to make time to sit with you and go through your test individually and see where I think you could have improved. All right, again, a bit of a long one. Hopefully it's made sense for you. Thanks very much for going through it. It is important always to review our work, and I'll leave you with that.